Hello, those of you who are here. Welcome. We'll give it a couple minutes, let people come in. Hello, Louis, Robert, welcome. Hello, Gautam and Bella, welcome. Hey, hello, Douse, welcome. Oh, Christine, welcome. So we'll give it another minute or two, and we'll get started. There's 6 people in the participants list, and 2 people it says are on. That little icon that says how many people are on the stream is never reliable. All right. Hello, Andrew. Welcome. Okay, I think we're good to start. So we will start with chanting, as we do. Magaseka Chanting Book. Let's do page 77. Atta Maha Purisa Vitaka. Atta Maha, great. Atta 8, Purisa, person. Vitaka, thoughts. So 8 thoughts of a great person. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Apicchassa yang dhammo nayang dhammo mahicchassa. Santuttassa yang dhammo nayang dhammo asantuttassa. Pavivittassa yang dhammo nayang dhammo sanganikara massa. Aradha viryasayang dhammo nyayang dhammo kusitassa upatitassa tissayang dhammo anyayang dhammo muttastissa samahittasayang dhammo nyayang dhammo asamahitassa panyavato ayang dhammo nyayang dhammo dupanyassa Nippapanchara masayang dhammo nippapancharitino nyayang dhammo papanchara massa papancharitino. English. This Dhamma is for reducing desire, not for increasing desire. This Dhamma is for increasing contentment, not for increasing contentment. This Dhamma is for cultivating seclusion, not for becoming sociable. This Dhamma is for becoming energetic, not for becoming lazy. This Dhamma is for becoming mindful, or for developing mindfulness, not for developing unmindfulness. This Dhamma is for developing composure, not for making restlessness. This Dhamma is for increasing wisdom, not for decreasing wisdom. This Dhamma is for delighting in freedom from impediments, not for delighting in impediments. Okay, friends. Welcome to Dhammapalooza, the second one of the new year. Wow, we just lost a bunch of people, even in the participants list. I wonder what happened. Everybody still here? My chanting scared everybody away. All right. So, very good. Okay, so welcome to Dhammapalooza, our 2-hour festival of Dhamma, where we do a variety of Dhamma-related activities, like chanting, like guided meditations, which we'll be doing later. And in between that, a lot of that's going to depend on what you guys want to do. We might have question and answers. We might have sutta reading. We might have Dhamma talk. And what I like to do is let the community have a say in how that's going to go. So while I'm talking for the next couple of minutes, if you have a question related to Dhamma, Buddhism, meditation, monasticism, etc. If you have a topic you'd like me to discuss or the community to discuss, or if anything like that, just feel free to put it in the chat. Remember, typing in the chat does not interrupt me. It does not bother me. This is actually a time for the community to come together. So if you're talking to each other in the chat, doing different things like that, that's perfectly fine. That's encouraged. You guys should be doing that, right? We're coming together as Dhamma friends to share in this festival of Dhamma together. So you should be engaging with each other and engaging with me. No problem. Excuse me. So let's see here. Oh, we already have a question. Robert's back with us on Dhammapalooza, so there will be no shortage of questions right off the bat. Very good. What was something that surprised you about the life of a monk, Bhante? In many ways, how not different than lay life it is. In many ways, I think that was one of the biggest surprises. It's a different modality, but it's still kind of the same. It's still, it's still get up, eat, sleep, work, and meditate, obviously. I mean, I meditated as a layperson too, right? So, it was one of those things where it didn't seem all that different. Um, Although I kind of expected it would be. Now, granted, this is at a working retreat center monastery in the West, not some place in Korea, like, where you can maybe go meditate 18 hours a day, 13 hours a day, or whatever. But it was kind of similar. Like it kind of made me realize, like, life is just life. You have to do the same. Like, I still have to brush my teeth like I was a layperson. I still have to take care of this body like I was a layperson. Right? I still wake up, go to sleep. I still do all the same things in a way. Right? So it's just like, it's just a different mode of being, but in many ways the same. I'm trying to think more about answering that question. It's an interesting question. It's not really something I've thought I've ever had anybody ask me. One thing that is different is that, especially if you're like, right now I'm by myself, I'm like a nomad monk, so it's a little bit easier to control my life. But if you're like, especially when you're a new monk at a monastery, you have a lot less control over things like choosing your diet, right? Like, you say, oh, I want to have a regular healthy diet. Well, that's not always going to be the case as a monk. It's like, you can't go to the store and shop what you're going to get for the next week, right? Like, you when you live in a monastery, you can't really choose, to be away from unskillful people that are living in the monastery with you. You're kind of stuck with them, right? There's a lot less ability to manage who you want around you, right? These kind of things. But on the other hand, once you become your own monk and you're out on your own, if you're supported, there's more freedom for sure. Definitely more freedom. In some ways, more freedom than I had in lay life. In other ways, less. Hello, Adriana. Robert says both Westerners and Asians put monks on a pedestal, I think, just in different ways. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I think is this. Westerners I think Asian people don't have a blind ideal about monastics, but they also don't question them. Like, I don't think most Asian people are like thinking like all monks are like these, perfect beings. I don't think that. But as part of the culture is you do not question monks, and monks are always the highest, and you always respect the monks. Whereas in the West, we kind of get into this like, oh, this wonderful, this wonderful old Asian man. He seems so wise and happy all the time, and this is what monks must be, right? No, so I think that's the main difference there. Hello, Adriana. Welcome. Lewis says, well, Robert says, if you're relying on alms, you end up eating whatever lay people give you. Yeah. You can't really be a vegetarian necessarily. Well, I was never anything like food-wise. I never like restricted my food. I just basically ate whatever in lay life. And that's basically how I am as a monastic. Whoever I'm with, that's what I eat. If I'm with people who are vegetarian, I eat vegetarian. If I'm with people who eat vegan, I eat vegan. If I'm with people who eat, omnivore diet, meat and vegetables, like the balanced diet, then that's what I eat. If I'm with people who are gluten-free, then I eat gluten-free. That's the way it goes. Yeah. At least that's how it should be. I don't really believe in putting extra restrictions and extras on people unless it's like a really seriously health related thing. Lewis says, one thing that monks from different traditions share is getting up early to meditate. Any insights on why this is so recommended and tips for developing this habit? I would not say that all traditions share that. It also depends on what you mean by early. I have been to at least one Thai forest monastery where they don't get up until after 6 and there's no morning chanting. Right. And then I've heard of all kinds of places where they wake up at 3:00 in the morning in Thailand anyway. Right. So there's more diversity than you might think in that regard. But in general, yeah, I mean, waking up early is something that is fairly universal. I would say if you're not living in a monastery, I would say that you need to make your schedule around what works for you and what fits your tendencies the best. Right? Don't force yourself. Don't think, well, everybody says I have to meditate in the morning, so I'm going to struggle and try to kill myself so I can meditate in the morning. I wouldn't bother with that. If it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, for instance, for me, how it kind of worked for me was I tried the whole, well, I'm going to meditate in the morning and then I meditate at night. And in the early days, I was always a night owl. I like to stay up late. So I didn't want to wake up early enough to meditate before work. But I also didn't, when I got home, especially, I worked a lot of hours. It was a very demanding job. When I got home, I didn't want to meditate either, nor did I want to go to the gym. So this is the interesting thing. I found the exact schedule that worked for me for both working out and meditating. So they came together like this, right? And so I tried a bunch of different things. And what ended up working for me is I got to the point in my practice where I decided to go to bed earlier. And by early, I mean 11 o'clock at night. because I would usually go to bed at like 1, right? Like I always liked staying up late playing video games, right? Getting in some of that escapism before having to go to work and do it all over again. So I decided, okay, instead of 1, I'm going to go to bed at 11 and I'm going to wake up at 6. Right? That's 7 hours. That's good. And so I'll still have my hours after work to play and to just, whatever, chill and de-stress and yada, yada. But I want to wake up early to go to the gym and to meditate and to listen to Dhamma talks and things like that. And so that's what happened with me was I ended up, so like the year before I left the monastery, I left to lay life for the monastery. My schedule was basically this, like wake up 5:40, 5:30ish, either CrossFit or going to the park to run and do things at 6 a.m. for about an hour. And then when I got back, so from like 7 to 8ish, 6:45, 7 to 8ish, I would shower, listen to, Dhamma talk. And then 8 o'clock, I would go to work. Work starts at 9, but I'd go to work at 8. And then from 8 to 9, I would meditate. Right? I would do my sitting meditation, walking meditation, etc. at my office, at work, outside. So I almost never meditated inside in my lay life. Almost never. I meditated outside when it rained, when it snowed, didn't matter. I meditated outside. I don't like meditating inside. Meditating outside is the best. So, but anyway, and this is kind of how it developed. I never could develop meditating at night. I just could not do it. It's just not my thing. Right? Especially, coming back after work and just I just wanted to chill. Like even at Bhavana, the evening meditation would always be the hardest because I worked my butt off all day and all these kind of things. And I'm like, evening meditation. Right? So, but because I saw the priority, because I felt the desire to do it, I changed my schedule around. I found what worked for me. And that couple hours in the morning, waking up and having those couple hours in the morning, that was my favorite time of the day. Nobody else was awake. Nobody was bothering me. I did my exercise and I did my Dhamma, and that was great. That was my best part of the day. Whatever happened the rest of the day, that was my best part of the day. That's where I almost, got into jhana for the first time. That's where I had my deepest insights. Those morning periods, right, of just exercise and Dhamma. And so you have to, see what works for you. Maybe mornings don't work for you, right? For many years, though, I thought, well, like, I'm a morning person. Or I'm not a night owl. I like to stay up late, blah, 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 these things. And now I don't necessarily believe in that so much. I did the 23andMe thing a bunch of years ago, and they still send me like things. And like one of the things was like my sleep time. I'm among the people who don't like to wake up too early, but don't need to sleep too late either. So it says like my ideal like wake up is like 7:30-ish. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because if I didn't have to wake up early, I'd go to bed 11, 12 every night. Even still today, even as a monk, like, today's Dhammapalooza, right? I'm with you guys till 10. I can't just like do this for 2 hours and then just like turn off and then go pass out. I can't. So every Dhammapalooza night, I'm up to at least midnight, right? And it kind of gives me a little bit of excitement, for better or worse, for skillful or unskillful, of those late days of staying up late. So Lewis says, "Oh, interesting. I just assumed that a few that I met 6 a.m. would be great for me already, even 7. I tend to wake up right before work. Isn't that what we all do? Right? My job, child protective service was my job. It's a ridiculous, brutal job. It's a crazy job. But most people would straggle in like at 9:10, 9:15. It was a salaried job. You made your own schedule because you were always like, I worked 60, 70 hours a week, normal. That was normal to work 60, 70 hours a week. And you kind of went, and so like I went from like being this person who kind of woke up at like 8:20 and just showered real quick and went out and was like, to, all right, I'm going there an hour early. I'm going to meditate. Right. I totally switched. I totally changed. And people would come at the beginning. They'd be like, what is this? They'd be coming in and they'd be like, what is he doing? He's like walking back and forth and he's like sitting out on a bench, like all bundled up. It's 20 degrees out. What the heck is this guy doing? But I loved it. Right. That's the way it is. I loved it. that was great time. But I was one of those people just straggling in. I don't find that Robert is saying that he also has trouble waking up in the morning. What I find is that as long as I get my 7 hours of sleep, if the 7 hours of sleep was, if I go to bed at 9 o'clock, I'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, no problem. I wake up. The problem is this. This is an interesting thing for me. Because I'm older now, I'm in those years now where you just start waking up in the middle of the night to pee. And what I find is the later I go to bed, the less chance I'm going to wake up, the better sleep I get. Like I tried to do this thing where I go to bed at 8 p.m. and I wake up at 4, and it was just miserable. Half the time I'd wake up at like 1 o'clock and I would be up for the rest of the night because I had 5-6 hours of sleep and I couldn't go. So like I like at least to stay up until 10 and then I can sleep and not wake up too much. There's something about it. I don't know. See, this is the thing. I love doing these kind of tests. This is why I encourage you guys when you're doing meditation things, you test things out. Say, well, what if I go to bed a little bit later? What if I go to bed a bit earlier? What if I do this? What if I do that? Let me test it. You have to be that like scientist, like that's somebody who's really interested, right? Investigation, Dhammavicaya, second factor of the 7 factors of awakening, right? To investigate. Let me see what's right. Right. And so it's like, and I even think like if this is what works for me, when I have my own monastery, do I force myself to wake up early just because that's what I'm supposed to do? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. But what I know is going to bed early makes me for a miserable night. It's just the way it goes. So, all right. Robert says, I wonder if it's still a prevalent meme in the wider culture that Buddhist equals vegetarian. I think they'd be surprised by Theravada and Tibetan Buddhists if that were the case. Yeah, I think, well, I think that the majority of people who are Westerners who come to Buddhism um, think Buddhism matches exactly with their, with their political stances, with their, vegetarianism, with this. And this is just not the case. Buddhist countries are very conservative, right? I remember the first time at Bhavana, I saw a Sri Lankan person's car and it had a Republican sticker on it, right? It was like Romney maybe or something like that. I was like, whoa. I said, oh boy, this is probably going to trigger some of these people. Sometimes I get a little kick out of, trolling people. But I'm like, oh boy, this is going to trigger some people. But it just shows you, like, you have to kind of understand the reality of things. The reality of things, especially like Sri Lanka, but most Buddhist countries are very strong on the mission of keeping the Dhamma alive. Very strong, right? Like that, like for many Sri Lankan people, that is like part of their life goals. Like that is like part of the country of Sri Lanka, is to keep the Dhamma alive, right? They've been doing it for 2,200 years, something like that, right? So that tends things that can be very, very conservative, for better or worse. For both. For me, conservative, whatever, conservative, progressive, like, these things. I want to conserve something. I want to make progress. These both things have both good and bad in them, right? That's why they need to have like this kind of talking out. They need to work together, kind of a thing, which is not what's happening in the country today. But this is the thing here. People, Westerners have a lot of, I had the idea to make a book all about Westerner misconceptions of Buddhism. I've had that idea for many years, since before I was a monk. And eventually I am going to get to it. So, Douse redacted a message. I wonder what that message was now. Just reading through the comments. Oh, more comments than I thought. Good, very good. Yeah, Adriana, anytime I do any kind of Dhamma, it takes me a while to settle down, because what happens is, like, when I let the Dhamma flow, like, I kind of just open myself up as a conduit, and it just kind of, like, I get energy and adrenaline and things just flow. And then, after a while, like, once it's done, it still kind of takes a while for that to start petering out. And once it peters out, it's like all my energy just feels like it just leaves me. But it takes a little while after an event for that stuff to peter out. That's how it goes. John is like, yeah, Dhammapalooza for some of us ends at 9. Well, if I ever end up actually moving to Colorado, Dhammapalooza is we're going to keep it the same time. So for our Eastern friends, it's going to be the same time. And it'll have to be a little bit earlier for those in Colorado. So it'll be like 6 to 9. No, 6 to 8. Yeah. Oh, I had a chat jump here. Das says, do you do any exercise for physical health? So when I was in lay life, I was an exercise nut. Like after I had my weight loss surgery and I became powerful, and I was doing my endurance events and barefoot running and CrossFit and doing all those. I love doing all of that. There are many things I can't do as a monastic. Like I can't go running as a monastic. When I was gaining weight, I was doing things like burpees, and I was trying to do more, get some cardio in, and anything that I could kind of do within a room, I was trying to do, and also do my walk. But it really didn't help that much because, like, to really burn calories as a monk, you need to sweat, you need to do cardio. Just going for a little walk is not going to do it. You either have to, basically have no food and go for a little walk, or you have to do a lot of exercise. And so that's why I did, I lost the 70 pounds, which I've probably gained about 15 pounds back since being here for the holidays and being with family and with the Indonesians. I'm trying to, I don't want to gain, I want to stay within a certain weight limit now, but even monks, like, monks can do all kinds of exercises. Monks have weights. You can do, basic like body cardio, like burpees and things like that. I think exercise is, and yoga, of course, I think exercise is good for everybody, period. Because when you exercise the body, the mind actually gets sharper, gets clearer. Right? The body and the mind are connected in that way. Right? So if you have a good, strong, healthy body, your mind will be more easily clear and better for meditation, better for mindfulness, better for everything. Adriana says, future student of the path monastery, wake up at 8:30 a.m. Nah, that's probably a bit too late. At least a morning monastery experience has to be at least 8. I would like a morning monastery experience, like literally it, when I do have my own place and I do have people there and we do a morning session, for that to also be always on YouTube as well, right? Like just like morning monastery experience is what it is, right? Even if it's just the same core 5-6 group, whatever of people, it's not about the numbers, right? It's always about like a community that comes together in the mornings to do a more like an experience like how it is at a monastery. All right, Robert, have a good one. Hello, Michael. Welcome. Tao says, Westerners' misconceptions about Buddhism by anthropologist monastic. Basically, yeah. Adriana says, I'm sure at the time of the Buddha, they got a lot of exercise naturally doing all to the wandering. Yeah, lots of wandering. And remember, there's lots of famine and stuff too. So they weren't, this is not like, and lots of people. This is not like modern day America and Europe or wherever, where you could just, get whatever food you want at any time. So yeah, it was a tough life as a wandering monastic back then, 2,600 years ago. It's the way it goes. John Fox, yes. Empires, cultures, countries rise and fall. Stars, galaxies, universes rise and fall. It's the way it goes. All right. So, do we have any more questions? If not, maybe we can read a sutta. Since we have some time here. Lewis says he has a theory about exercise being good for mental health because it forces people to pay attention to their body for a while. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I put myself in the position of a hunter gatherer 30,000 years ago. Right? You are so in tune with what's going on around you, right? Because you freaking have to be, because there could be like not a saber tooth, because I don't know if it's necessarily that the humans and saber tooths live together, at least not for long anyway. But like there's this like beast that like their jaw exactly fits a humanoid skull. Like they basically were like adapted to like kill monkeys, humans, whatever, right? So like you had to be aware for survival, right? So you had to be aware of your body and the the limitations of your body and all these kind of things. And so yeah, I mean, in some ways I would say that they were a bit more mindful and understanding of the various aspects of the body just by nature of them being in survival, as opposed to us where we have to really, really kind of like practice. And I was like, okay, let me do my satipatthana. Even at the time of the Buddha, by the time of the Buddha, people had already been farming for thousands of years. There's already people kind of, and when you become a sedentary farmer, you start to lose a lot of those skills and understandings. It's just the way it goes. Adriana, I think that's flow. That's not, I don't think that's mindfulness. That's more like a flow state. John says, I see so many people staring at the screens at the gym. Well, that's because most of the exercises in the gym are boring. I'm going to go on a treadmill and all I see is like the wall in front of me or whatever. I look upon who everybody else in the gym. That's boring. Going outside, running outside and doing all these things, being out in nature. That's way better for exercise. Way better. But we're kind of going out of the Dhamma here. Let's get back to the Dhamma with some Sutta. With Prince Bodhi. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying in the land of the Bughas on Crocodile Hill, not to be confused with Crocodile Rock, in the deer park at Bay Sakala's Wood. Now at that time, a new stilt longhouse named Pink Lotus had recently been constructed for Prince Bodhi. It had not yet been occupied by an ascetic or Brahmin or any person at all. Then Prince Bodhi addressed the Brahmin student Sanjikaputta. Please, dear Sanjikaputta. So Putta always is son of, right? So this person's literally named son of Sanjika. That's their name. So you see this very often. Dear Sanjikaputta, go to the Buddha, and in my name bow with your head to his feet. Ask him if he is healthy, well, nimble, strong, and living comfortably. And then ask him whether he might accept tomorrow's meal from me together with the mendicant Sangha. Yes, sir, Sanjikaputta replied. He did as Prince Bodhi asked. And the Buddha consented in silence. Then, knowing that the Buddha had consented, Sanjikaputta got up from his seat, went to Prince Bodhi, and said, I gave the ascetic Gautama your message, and he accepted. And when the night had passed, Prince Bodhi had a variety of delicious foods prepared in his own home. He also had the pink lotus longhouse spread with white cloth down to the last step of the staircase. Then he said to the Sanjikaputta, Please, dear Sanjikaputta, go to the Buddha and announce the time, saying, Sir, it's time, the meal is ready. Yes, sir, Sanjikaputta replied, and he did as he was asked. Then the Buddha robed up in the morning, and taking his bowl and robe, went to Prince Bodhi's home. Now at that time, Prince Bodhi was standing outside the gates waiting for the Buddha. Seeing the Buddha coming off in the distance, he went out to greet him. After bowing and inviting the Buddha to go first, he approached the pink lotus longhouse. But the Buddha stopped by the last step of the staircase. Then Prince Bodhi said to him, Sir, let the Blessed One ascend on the cloth. Let the Holy One ascend on the cloth. It will be for my lasting welfare and happiness. But when he said this, the Buddha kept silent. For a second time and a third time, Prince Bodhi said this, Please step on the cloth. It will be for my long-lasting welfare and happiness. Then the Buddha glanced at Venerable Ananda. So Ananda said to Prince Bodhi, Fold up the cloth, Prince. The Buddha will not step on white cloth. The realized one has compassion for future generations. So Prince Bodhi had the cloth folded up and the seats spread out upstairs in the longhouse. Now, this is an interesting one. I'm sure that there might be a note, like by Bhikkhu Bodhi in his translation, as to what this exactly means. But so as far as I can tell, if I'm not mistaken, this longhouse is newly built, correct? Let me see. Yep, recently been constructed. So what this king is wanting to do is have the Buddha bless that cloth and this longhouse. right? By being the first person on the cloth and into the longhouse. The Buddha doesn't do it. It's interesting because it's what monks do all the time in Buddhist countries now, right? Come have the first meal in our house, spend the night chanting in our house, doing these kind of things, right? That's very common in Buddhist world today. The Buddha refuses to do it and then says, because he has compassion for future generations. Very interesting. Now, I'm sure that can be used. Well, I mean, it doesn't really mean that. It's because of this or this. I don't know. I don't know. It's quite interesting, isn't it? But this is not the only place that kind of hints at the Buddha not wanting monks to do certain things that monks basically do all the time now. All these kind of ritual, like parita chanting, blessings, all these kind of things. All right, so let's go back to it. So Prince Bodhi had the cloth folded up and the seats spread out upstairs in the longhouse. Then the Buddha ascended the longhouse and sat on the seats spread out together with the Sangha of mendicants. Then Prince Bodhi served and satisfied the mendicant Sangha headed by the Buddha with his own hands with a variety of delicious foods. When the Buddha had eaten and washed his hand and bowl, the Prince Bodhi took a low seat, sat to one side, and said to him, "Sir, this is what I think. Pleasure is not gained through pleasure. Pleasure is gained through pain." So let me think about the words here. This is translated by Bhante Sujato, and the words here are sukha and dukkha. Sukha is happiness, pleasantness. Dukkha, unhappiness, unpleasantness, painful, right? Sukha can be pleasurable. So basically, one way you could think about this other than pleasure, happiness is to be gained through suffering. Right? Happiness is not gained through happiness. Pleasantness is not gained through pleasantness. Happiness is gained through unpleasantness and suffering. And so we know the Buddha tried this, didn't they? Right? So we're going to see here, the Buddha's going to say, really? Well, let's see about that. Prince, before my awakening, when I was still an unawakened, but intent on awaken, I too thought pleasure is not gained through pleasure. Pleasure is gained through pain. Sometime later, while still black-haired, blessed with youth, in the prime of life, though my mother and father wished otherwise, weeping with tearful faces, I shaved off my hair and beard, dressed in ochre robes, and went forth from the lay life to homelessness. So you hear, right here, you see this little clip here. All right, you see this a couple times in the suttas. Buddha saying that the parents knew very well that he was leaving. There's no like everybody fell asleep and he walked out and magical elephants and all these things like you hear the stories now. No. All right, Oceania is fully represented. Our Australian friend and our New Zealand friend. Welcome, Gray. One of these days we have to get our African friend on. See if we can get all 7 continents in one chat. In one Dhammapalooza. That would be really cool. If probably really hard to pull off. All right. Once I had gone forth, I set out to discover what is skillful. Seeking the supreme state of sublime peace, I approached Alara Kalama and said to him, "Reverend Kalama, I wish to lead the spiritual life in this teaching and training." Alara Kalama replied, "Stay, Venerable. This teaching is such that a sensible person can soon realize their own teacher's doctrine with their own insight and live having achieved it. I quickly memorized that teaching. So far as lip recital and oral recitation were concerned, I spoke with the knowledge and authority of the elders. I claimed to know and see, and so did others. Then it occurred to me, it is not solely by mere faith that Allah Kalama declares, I realize this teaching with my own insight and live it having achieved it. Surely he meditates knowing and seeing this teaching. So I approached Allah Kalama and said to him, Reverend Kalama, to what extent do you say you've realized this teaching with your own insight? When I said this, he declared the dimension of nothingness. So he's talking about the arupa attainments, right? The formless, some people call them formless jhanas, although they're never called jhanas in the suttas. They're called attainments. They're not really jhanas. So he's claiming arupa here. When I said this, he declared the dimension of nothingness. Then it occurred to me, it's not just Allah Kalama who has faith, energy, mindfulness, immersion, and wisdom. That's the 5 faculties that turn into the 5 powers. I too have these things. Why don't I make an effort to realize the same teaching that Allah Kalama says he has realized with his own insight? I quickly realized that teaching with my own insight and lived having achieved it. So I approached Allah Kalama and said to him, Reverend Kalama, have you realized? Oh, hello, Elaine. Welcome. Reverend Kalama, have you realized this teaching with your own insight up to this point and declare having achieved it? I have, Reverend. I too have realized this teaching with my own insight up to this point and lived having achievement. We are fortunate, Reverend, so very fortunate to see a venerable such as yourself having as one of our spiritual companions. So the teaching that I've realized with my own insight and declare having achieved it, you have also realized with your own insight. Hello, Diana. Welcome. And live having achieved it. The teaching that you've realized with your own insight and live having achieved, I've also realized with my own insight and declare having achieved it. So the teaching that I know you know, the teaching that you know I know. I am like you and you are like me. Come now, Reverend, we should both lead this community together. And that is how my teacher, Allah Kalama, placed me, his student, on the same position as him and honored me with lofty praise. Then it occurred to me, this teaching does not lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. It only leads as far as rebirth in the dimension of nothingness. Oh, Elaine, well, I hope Gabby is doing well. Hope it's nothing too serious. Realizing that the teaching was inadequate, I left disappointed. I set out to discover what is skillful. So this is the Buddha investigating, right? This is the Buddha, like I was saying earlier, about how you have to be inquisitive to investigate. The Buddha's trying to find a way out. So he's like, well, this only got me so far. I got to find another way. Let's keep rambling on. I set out to discover what is skillful. Seeking the supreme state of the sublime peace, I approached Uddaka, son of Rama. So that's why you hear Uddaka Ramaputta. Reverend, I wish to lead the spiritual life in this teaching and training. Uddaka replied, Stay, Venerable. This teaching is such that the sensible person can soon realize their own teacher's doctrine with it, their own insight, having achieved it. I quickly memorized that teaching. And it's just repeating of the same thing. And then he says, okay, well, let me ask Rama. Reverend, to what extent did Rama say he'd realized this teaching with his own insight. When I said this, Uddaka, son of Rama, declared the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Then it occurred to me, it's not just Rama who had faith, energy, mindfulness, immersion, and wisdom. Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. I too have these things. Why don't I make an effort to realize this teaching? And so I quickly realized the teaching. I was on par. So again, Buddha goes through another teacher, masters the teaching, and now that teacher's like, okay, well, you're just like me. So stay and let's teach. And that is how my spiritual companion Uddaka, son of Rama, placed me in the position of a teacher and honored me with lofty praise. Then it occurred to me, this teaching does not lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. It only leads as far as rebirth in the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Realizing that this teaching was inadequate, I left disappointed. I set out to discover what is skillful, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace. Traveling stage by stage in the Magadhan land, I arrived at Senegama near Uruvela. There I saw a delightful park, a lovely grove, with a flowering river that was clean, clear, charming, with smooth banks, and nearby was a village for alms. Then it occurred to me, this park is truly delightful. A lovely grove with flowing rivers that's clean and charming, with smooth banks. And nearby, there's a village for alms. So one thing I will say is, because just checking out on the time and seeing how so many people just kind of joined in the last couple of minutes, I am okay. If you guys have any questions you'd like to ask, any topics you'd like me to discuss, feel free to type that in the chat. And as always, to discuss with each other in the chat, right? Remember, the typing in the chat is not bothering me. You guys are supposed to engage with each other in the chat, say hello, talk Dhamma to each other, all that stuff, no problem. So if you have any questions or anything that you'd like me to ask, or a topic you'd like me to discuss related to Dhamma, then put that in the chat as I continue to go through the sutta. Because this is a long sutta. I don't know if we're going to finish it, but we can keep going through. It's a very good sutta to see these, see the Buddha talking about what he went through. And of course, after this teacher, we're going to get into the good stuff, like the eating one grain of rice a day and things like that. All right. I saw a delightful park, a lovely grove with a flowing river that was clean and charming, with smooth banks, and nearby was a village for alms. Then it occurred to me, this park is truly delightful, a lovely grove with a flowing river, etc., etc. This is good enough for a gentleman who wishes to put forth effort in meditation. So I sat down right there thinking, this is good enough for meditation. And then these three examples, which were neither supernaturally inspired nor learned before in the past, occurred to me. Suppose there was a green sappy log and it was lying in water. Then a person comes along with drill stick, thinking to light a fire and to produce heat. The drill stick is like, you ever see that? Like the people making primitive, fire to try to get the fire going. That could take hours. It's ridiculously hard to do that. So the Buddha is saying, okay, there's this green sappy log, and now and it was in water, and now we're going to try to get some sparks from it, right? Then the person comes along with a drill stick, thinking to light a fire and produce heat. What do you think, Prince? By drilling the stick against that green sappy log lying in water, could that light a fire and produce heat? No, sir. Why is that? Because it's all a green sappy log. It's lying in water. That person will eventually get weary and frustrated. Even if it's not a green sappy log, you can still get weary and frustrated from doing these old ways. Not easy. In the same way, there are ascetics and Brahmins who don't live withdrawn in body and mind from sensual pleasures. They haven't internally given up or still desire, affection, infatuation, thirst, and passion for sensual pleasures. Regardless of whether or not they suffer painful, sharp, severe, acute feelings, because of their efforts, they are incapable of knowledge and vision of supreme awakening. Now, this can keep in mind, this is going back to the beginning, right? Because the Buddha, the guy comes to the Buddha and says, you can only get pleasure through pain. You can only get happiness through suffering, right? And the Buddha's giving an example here. Well, this person's causing themselves all kinds of suffering. Are they gaining anything from it? And the answer is no. No, they are not. This was the first example that occurred to me. Then a second example occurred to me. Suppose there was a green sappy log and it was lying on dry land, far from water. Then a person comes along with a drill stick to light a fire. What do you think? Could they light that fire? No, sir. Why is that? Because it's still a green sappy log, despite the fact that it's lying on dry land. That person will eventually get frustrated. In the same way, there are ascetics and Brahmins who live withdrawn in body and mind from sensual pleasures, but they haven't internally given up or still desire, affection, infatuation, thirst, and passion for sensual pleasures. Regardless of whether or not they suffer painful, sharp, severe, acute feelings because of their efforts, they are incapable of knowledge and vision of supreme awakening. So in this line, the Buddha is saying there are people who live secluded in the forest, but their mind is still not secluded. Their mind is still infatuated. So they're still suffering and they're not gaining anything from it. This was the second example that occurred to me. Then a third example occurred to me. Suppose there was a dried up withered log and it was lying on dry land far from water. Then a person comes along to light a fire. What do you think? Will this light produce heat? Yes. Why is that? Because it's dried up, withered log, and it's lying on dry land far from water. In the same way, there are ascetics and Brahmins. Hello, Gotos. Welcome. He grew out his eyebrows. Looks better. Yeah, I grew up my eyebrows two some odd years ago, but maybe you came to us from watching my YouTube videos, so you saw many YouTube videos of me without them. Yeah. Elaine asks, what would rebirth be like in a non-perception round? Where does this realm fit in the Buddhist cosmology? So these arupa jhanas, or arupa attainments, even I say it every once in a while, being reborn in them is being reborn in essentially mind-made rebirths that literally have no body, no physical connection whatsoever, and they last like the longest amount of time in samsara, like ungodly, like 84,000 eons or something. Or maybe it was 84 eons. I don't know. But it's like way longer than time in the heavens and the hells and all these different places. Way longer, right? You're just kind of this like disembodied, like mind just out there in the ether doing its thing for 84,000 years. Or 84,000 eons, however you want to, I don't know. A long, long time. So that's kind of, that's what those mind states would be. All right, continuing on. In the same way, there are ascetics and Brahmins who live withdrawn in body and mind from sensual pleasures, and they have internally given up and stilled desire, affection, infatuation, thirst, and passion for sensual pleasures, regardless of whether or not they suffer painful, sharp, severe, acute feelings. Because of their efforts, They are capable of knowledge and vision of supreme awakening. My throat's getting a little dry. Elaine says, so we don't want to go there, right? I mean, better than going to the hell realms. It doesn't sound like it's a bad place. It doesn't sound like a bad thing. It doesn't sound like a good thing either. I mean, because if good is moving towards awakening, right? If good is moving towards awakening, then you want to keep being born as a human, keep practicing, hearing the Dhamma and practicing. Michael, okay, Michael asked a good question. No, it's not a heaven realm, Adriana. Heaven realm is pleasurable. It's like only pleasure. It's a heaven realm. This is like literal there's no pleasure or pain. There's no, like, it's from dimension of nothingness, dimension of neither perception or non-perception. All of that is, you need something. You need perception. You need all of these things in the heaven realms to enjoy your 72 dove-footed nymphs. That's just the way it goes. So, okay, Michael asked a question here. I'm at the point where I'm starting to walk down the path of being a Buddhist. If I were to take refuge, do I make the journey to a temple, or is there a process to go through first? In Theravada, it's not really a big process. They make it a big process for like Westerners. They make it like an event. Like what I would suggest is this, right? We're in January, right? Wait till May. In May, so a couple months, right? So there's no rush. You're still pretty new to these things. You can practice and you can understand what it means to, take refuge and precepts and things like that. If there's a place like a temple you can go to that has what they call a Vesak ceremony, Vesak, right? And a lot of times in those ceremonies, they will give people refuge and precepts for the first time. And so that's quote unquote how you become a Buddhist. So you could do that. That's what I did. There was no Theravada place near me, so I did it at a Mahayana, a Chinese Mahayana place. I took the refuge and precepts in Chinese. I had no idea what they were saying. I just knew that I became a Buddhist. I had been studying for at least a year beforehand, so I knew what the precepts and the refuge was. I knew what I was doing. It was just done. The form was just done in a different language, or every once in a while I do the precept ceremonies online on Second Life. I make an event out of it. If you don't have a place that you could do it in person, we could do it online. Either one is fine. All right, so let's keep moving. These are the three examples which were neither supernaturally inspired nor learned before in the past that occurred to me. Then it occurred to me, why don't I, with teeth clenched and tongue pressed against the roof of my mouth, squeeze, squatch, and torture my mind with mind? Right? Where have we seen this? We know from the Majjhima Nikaya number 20, right? The removal of distracting thoughts. After you try all the other reasons, the last one is crushing mind with mind, right? And so the Buddha did this until sweat ran from my armpits. It was like when a strong man grabs a weaker man by the head or throat and shoulder and squeezes and squashes and tortures them. In the same way, with teeth clenched and tongues, I press, I squeeze. Okay, same. My energy was roused up and unflagging, and my mindfulness was established and lucid, but my body was disturbed, not tranquil, because I pushed too hard with that painful striving. Right. So here we have. See, if somebody is new to Buddhism, they read the 5 ways of dealing with distracting thoughts, and they see number 5 and they think, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to force the thought out of my mind. That's not how it works. That's not what the Buddha is talking about there. Let me look at the chat here. I see something going on. So Michael's saying doing it online, I guess being physically there is less important than I thought. Yeah, no, it's not neat. Well, see, this is the thing. In some Mahayana traditions, in Tibetan, you bet your booty you got to be there. As a matter of fact, like in Tibetan, it's like a 3, 4, 5, 6 month process. They put you through classes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? It's not like that in Theravada. Right? In Theravada, it's like, come, chant, you're done. It's good enough. Yes, John is one of our regulars for morning monastery experience. Although for Michael, it would be afternoon monastery experience. But it wouldn't be, because afternoon monastery experience is usually either work or personal time, one or the other. Then it occurred to me, why don't I practice the breathless absorption? So I cut off my breathing through my mouth and nose. But then winds came out of my ears, making loud noises, like the puffing of a blacksmith's bellows. My energy was roused up and unflagging, and my mindfulness was established and lucid, but my body was disturbed, not tranquil, because I'd pushed too hard with that painful striving. Then it occurred to me, why don't I keep practicing the breathless absorption? So I cut off my breathing, but then strong winds, like a strong man was drilling into my head with a sharp point. My energy was roused and unflagging. My mindfulness was established and lucid, but my body was disturbed, not tranquil, because I'd pushed too hard with that painful striving. Then it occurred to me, why don't I keep practicing the breathless absorption? So he's like, well, I'm just going to keep taking this to the limit. Let's just keep going. So I cut off my breathing, but then I got a severe headache, like a strong man was tightening a tough leather strap around my head. My head was roused, but my body was disturbed. Then it occurred to me, why don't I keep practicing? So he's like, yeah, this is okay. I mean, it's hard, but I think I can take more. Let me keep going. Then strong winds carved up my belly, like a death butcher or their apprentice was slicing my belly open with a meat cleaver. My energy was aroused, but my body was disturbed. I'd pushed too hard. Then it occurred to me, why don't I keep practicing? So I cut off my breathing. Then there was an intense burning in my body. So like two strong men grabbing a weaker man by the arms to burn and scorch him on a pit of glowing coals. My energy was roused up, my mindfulness, etc., but my body was disturbed. Then some deities saw me and said, "The ascetic Gautama is dead." Others said, "He's not dead, but he's dying." Others said, "He's not dead or dying. The ascetic Gautama is the perfected one, for that is how the perfected one lives." This is interesting, is it not? You have somebody's like, they're dead, they're dying. No, they're actually awakened. This is a deva thinking that this person is awakened. He wasn't yet. Then it occurred to me, why don't I practice completely cutting off food? But the deities came to me and said, "Good sir, don't practice totally cutting off food. If you do, we'll infuse divine nectar into your pores, and you will live on that." Then it occurred to me, if I claimed to be completely fasting while these deities infuse divine nectar in my pores, that would be a lie on my part. So I dismissed those deities, saying there's no need. Then it occurred to me, why don't I just take a little bit of food each time? A cup or a broth made from mung beans, lentils, chickpeas, or green gram. So that's what I did. Let me see here. Look in the chat. Some things are moving. Oh, Michael, I was talking about if you came to morning monastery experience, which is 12 hours before this. It's 8 a.m. for us here. Okay, just comments here. All right, okay. So now the Buddha is saying, I'll take a little bit until my body became extremely emaciated. So due to eating so little, my limbs became like the joints of an 80-year-old corpse, 80-year-old or a corpse. My bottom became like a camel's hoof. My vertebrae stuck out like beads on a string. And my ribs were as gaunt as the broken down rafters on an old barn. Due to eating so little, the gleam of my eyes sank deep in their sockets, like the gleam of water sunk deep down a well. Due to eating so little, my scalp shriveled and withered, like a green bitter gourd in the wind and sun. Due to eating so little, the skin of my belly stuck to my backbone, so that when I tried to rub the skin of my belly, it grabbed my backbone. And when I tried to rub my backbone, it rubbed the skin of my belly. Due to eating so little, when I tried to urinate or defecate, I fell face down right there. Due to eating so little, when I tried to relieve my body by rubbing my limbs with my hand, the hair rotted at its roots, fell out. Then some people saw me and said, the ascetic Gautama is black. Some said, he's not black, he's brown. Some said, he's neither black nor brown. The ascetic Gautama is tawny, has tawny skin. That's how far the pure, bright complexion of my skin had been ruined by taking so little food. Then it occurred to me, whenever ascetics and Brahmins have experienced painful, sharp, severe, acute feelings due to overexertion, whether in the past, future, or present, this is as far as it goes. No one has done more than this. But I have not achieved any superhuman distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones by this severe, grueling work. Could there be another path to awakening? Then it occurred to me. So this is the famous story of the Buddha attaining jhana when he was young. I recalled sitting in the cool shade of the rose apple tree while my father, the Sakyan, was off working. Yet another thing telling you that his father was not a king and he was not a prince. Also, Sakyan was a republic. So at best, his father would be maybe like a senator, and he is senator's son. All right. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana, which has rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. Could that be the path to awakening? Stem from that memory came the realization that is the path to awakening. Interestingly enough, right? So we have jhana in the suttas, the Buddha saying is the path to awakening. But we have these modern vipassana movements that say jhana, no jhana. That's not sutta. Sutta is both samatha and vipassana, samadhi and panya. Then it occurred to me, why am I afraid of that pleasure? For it has nothing to do with sensual pleasures or unskillful qualities. Then it occurred to me, I am not afraid of that pleasure, for it has nothing to do with sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities. Then it occurred to me, I can't achieve that pleasure with a body so excessively emaciated. Why don't I eat some solid food, some rice and porridge? So I ate some solid food. Now at that time, the 5 mendicants were attending on me, thinking, the ascetic Gautama will tell us any truth that he realizes. But when I ate some solid food, they left disappointed in me, saying, the ascetic Gautama has become indulgent. He has strayed from the struggle and returned to indulgence. After eating the solid food and gathering my strength, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana, second, third, fourth jhana. When my mind had immersed in samadhi like this, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable. I love that those 4 words are perfectly picked. They just work together so well. Pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable. I extended it towards the recollection of the past lives. I recollected many past lives, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000, 100,000 rebirths. Many eons of the world contracting, many eons of the world expanding, many eons of the world contracting and expanding. And so I recollected my many kinds of past lives with features and details. This was the first knowledge which I achieved in the first watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed and knowledge arose. Darkness was destroyed and light arose, as happens for a meditator who is diligent, keen, and resolute. When my mind had immersed in samadhi like this, purified, blight, flawed, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable, I extended it towards the knowledge of death and rebirth of sentient beings. With clairvoyance that is purified in superhumans, I saw sentient beings passing away and being reborn, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, in a good place or a bad place. I understood how sentient beings are reborn according to their deeds. This was the second knowledge which I achieved in the middle watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed and knowledge arose. Darkness was destroyed and light arose, as happens for a meditator who is diligent, keen, and resolute. All right, Michael. Good day. Douse says, Douse making wonderful comments as always. No pain, no gain. Yeah. And so again, I extended it towards the knowledge of the ending of the defilements. I truly understood this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. And this is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. I truly understood these are the defilements. This is the origin of the defilements. This is the cessation of the defilements. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of the defilements. Knowing and seeing like this, my mind was freed from the defilements of sensuality, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When it was freed, I knew it was freed. I understood. Rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There is no return to any state of existence. This was the third knowledge which I achieved in the last watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed and knowledge arose. Darkness was destroyed and light arose, as happens for a meditator who is diligent, keen, and resolute. Then it occurred to me, this principle I have discovered is deep, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the scope of logic, subtle, comprehensible to the astute. But people like attachment. They love it and enjoy it. It's hard for them to see this thing. That is specific conditionality dependent origination. It's also hard for them to see this thing. That is the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, and extinguishment. And if I were to teach the Dhamma, others might not understand me, which would be really wearying and troublesome for me. And then these verses, which neither supernaturally inspired nor learned before in the past, occurred to me. I've struggled hard to realize this, enough with trying to explain it. This teaching is not easily understood by those mired in greed and hate. Those besotted by greed can't see what's subtle going on against the stream, deep hard to see, for they've shrouded in the mass of darkness. As I reflected like this in my mind, inclined towards remaining passive, to not teaching the Dhamma, the Brahma Sahampati, knowing what I was thinking, thought, oh my goodness, the world will fall to loot, will be lost, the world will perish. For the mind of the realized one, the fully awakened Buddha, inclines to remaining passive, not to teaching Dhamma. Then the Brahma Sahampati, as easily as a strong person would extend and contract their arm, vanished from the Brahma realm and reappeared in front of me. He arranged his robe over one shoulder, raised his joined palms toward me and said, Sir, let the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. Let the Holy One teach the Dhamma. There are beings with little dust in their eyes. They're in decline because they haven't heard the teaching. There will be those who understand the teaching. That's what the Brahma Sahampati said. Then he went on to say, among the Magdins, there appeared in the past an impure teaching thought up by those still stained. Fling open the doors to the deathless. Let them hear the teaching the Immaculate One discovered. Standing high on a rocky mountain, you can see all the people around in just the same way, all seer, wise one. Having ascended the temple truth, rid of sorrow, look upon the people, swamped with sorrow, oppressed by rebirth and old age. Rise, hero, victory in battle, leader of the caravan. Wander the world without obligation. Let the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. There will be those who understand. Isn't that so wonderful and poetic and beautiful? I think that's where we're going to end, because we have less than a half hour left, and I do want us to do a little bit of meditation. So let's do maybe 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have a couple of minutes at the end to do our sharing of merits and closing. Close your eyes. Set your body up in a stable and comfortable position. Since it's a short meditation, I'm not going to give a full guided meditation. Most of you have heard my meditations many times anyway. For the next 20 minutes, practice following the breath. Watch as the breath goes in, watch as the breath goes out. Try to observe how the breath changes. And whenever you get distracted from the breath, simply acknowledge the distraction, practice letting go of it, and return to the breath. All right, friends. Slowly come back to the live stream. Hope you had a fruitful short meditation. And as we end, we'll do our chanting as always. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, baya patta chane baya, soka patta chane soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, ettavata cha mehi, sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhiya, akasatta chabumata, deva naga mahiddika, punyang tang anumoditva, charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, friends. So, do some final news announcements. Morning Monastery Experience is still held off until probably Monday. I think Monday we'll get it started. I'm pretty much recovered from COVID, although my energy level is still not there just yet. Like I could tell that even just from all the talking I did and the reading for the Dhammapalooza, I could feel like it's not quite just there, a bit strained. But mostly I'm 100% over the COVID, and this weekend I'll be going either Friday or Saturday, hopefully going to New York and continuing on with everything as normal there. So we'll start Morning Monastery Experience. We'll have Dhammapalooza again, hopefully with Tansanti. We'll see. He's also recovered. He had no symptoms if he had it or not, one way or the other. Anyway, he's fine, which is good. He's much older, so it's good that he didn't have to go through any issues there. And I guess that's that. So friends, until next time, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. Practice well and be well. I'll see you again, probably Thursday on Second Life. Good night.